3, 2, 1. The failure of the global order can be pinpointed to the collapse of the Western Empire. Your bottles first before we move on to my extensions. Side opposition is idealistic in an ideal world. We want equal and meritocratic access for trade. In theory and in a vacuum, that happens. However, as what Kuya's Joseph preempts, this leads to monopolistic control and oligarchies like OPEC and cartels who control and influence literally the Strait of Hormuz that wrecks the world when boom and bust cycles happen. On our comparative, the Suez Canal and Strait of Hormuz are less likely to be singular choke points for international trade. This is on the basis that this is a world reset motion. They cannot argue on the case of a shift. Second, on their side, you have a concentration of resources, specifically in those areas. No more response to Kuya Yosef's POI. Sure, you have more free trade agreements on your side. The underwriters of those agreements are dependent on the lens of the hegemonic world power, making good decisions. And at best, even if they are benevolent and effective, it takes way too long because of geographic location. And on our comparative, you can import and export regionally democratizing resource capacity and distribution. And lastly, competition misunderstands how trade works. Obviously, there are literal geographic barriers. The less of a cartel and oligopoly because they would likely create continental hubs around the world in the name of the regionalistic bloc. They have an incentive to still trade because they are profit-driven and want more deals. This is better than being solely reliant on the altruism on status quo, which is going to fail if this particular thing collapses. I'll take the point.
In the Strait of Hormuz, it is the regional trading bloc which is really weak. That is cannot pressure Iran to open the choke point, right?
Yeah, the reactionism that came from this is from Iran as a form of retaliation against the U.S. aggression when it comes to this particular thing, right? Which we were going to explain earlier. The first extension is just it's easier to call out monopolies on our side. This argument is going to deal with the potentiality of accountability that opposition so likely wants to have, right? Because it's just less likely on their side, even if it's going to exist on both sides, it's a matter of extent, right? It's why a monopoly challenge is the most important transitional point. This is important to explain because the prevention mechanisms of unchecked power is very, very important as opposed to what happens right now. The reason that the Western powers became so powerful in the first place is because of the advantages that they wanted to have compared to the little countries that wanted to rise in the first place. What happens in our world is because of these regional powers interested in keeping the supply chain fair, meaning you have other countries trying to check and balance these particular rising powers. Second, at the point in which a hegemon status is forming, these trading countries can easily suppress the influence of that particular hegemony. If they are so focused on this regional trading blocks, you get a lot of check and balance because you see that this particular country is wanting to take advantage of whatever situation you have, right? So third, you just don't want to let it happen in the first place because of the particular model. On the other side of the house, global is restricting trading channels. There's likelier sanctions. They're going to be blasted in these trading wars because of the particular incentives of these big countries who want to have a hold to this particular power, as what Kuya Yusef already. There's just a less splash damage. This response to the POI coming from opposition. Let me ask you, when Iran locked the Strait of Hormuz, almost every country has struggled because of a lack of alternative. Thailand led to almost beg to have access to the strait. PH turned to Russia, even if it's going to be a 2-day supply, etc. On our side, you get less of this because of the proximate alternatives you have when you focus on this particular regional trading blocks. On the regional trading blocks perspective, you want to resolve these particular issues quicker when a particular hegemony acts up. You cannot quickly look to an alternative. There's more diplomacy efforts that's going to happen, lessening of sanctions, etc. Because the effects of you not wanting to fix a particular thing is going to be so much worse because you feel it immediately, right? So when it comes to this particular particular case, I think we just and the reason it's exclusive is because you do not rely on a single actor just screwing it up for everyone without feeling the consequences of their reckless actions. For example, America doesn't lose as much right now in the US-Israel-Iran war. It's the US bases near the Middle East. It's the countries in the neighboring countries of Israel and Iran, right? Meaning then, the reason this is incredibly important because there's a less risk adversity for the innocent countries, and the reason that this is justified is because you just minimize the damage in the first place, right? And to explain, it's just why bad faith actors are likely to be incentivized in wanting to fix these problems in the first place. This deals with how they should deal with their current conditions, right? Because I think opposition's case, it relies on an idealistic frame of, wanting to promote this particular stability. But the stability is highly reliant on the trade bloc themselves, right? Because on our world, you want to keep the trade, you want to keep you want to keep the countries of the bloc relatively stable. This is because of proximity. When you have them want to be looking to alternatives, you reduce a lot of their power to be able to trade with these neighboring countries. And third is that they second guess going into war. Compared to status quo, the empire controls the conditions. A single global rule-based order is wanting to be able to hold certain choke points at each and every part of the world, as what Kuya Yusuf explained, but was not responded to the opposition. And the last question is just on less reaction to rising protectionism. Protectionism in and of itself is not a bad thing, right? As a reaction to global crisis, it inherently lessens your availability to be able to in yourself to trade, right? How this happens right now is because of the reliance on these Western countries, right? Look at Iran, China, Thailand, EU countries, etc. How they're going to want to gatekeep their resources at this times of trouble. The money dependency happens on both ways. It's a matter of extent. And it's less on our side when you have proximate actors to be able to have your particular trade be more open. Foreign solidarity happens because we open ourselves better to regional blocks. Sure, there will be bad faith actors because, as I've explained earlier, there's just going to be more checks and balances and accountability mechanisms that's going to happen. And with that, I end my speech here.